So welcome. This is the CHAOSS informal weekly sync. Next week we'll have a more structured agenda, but welcome everybody. I will put the minutes in the chat here. There you go. And I'm gonna actually, I just realized looking at Matt Broberg and Georg and Don, we should probably have a podcast on this list today too. So
oh yes, we should
just talk about that. So okay, so here are the minutes. If you could add yourself to this list and tell us how you're feeling today. Love this edition. We have some mulch arriving. I order far too much mulch every year. Seem to have a mulch problem. That's all right. It's 50. And do you have snow on the ground in Minnesota, Matt? At all?
No, it's all melted away finally.
Even in the dark corners?
Yeah, there's just due to tree coverage, right in front of my house is like one of those slivers. So all of my street looked like it had spring, and then I had a pile of about 1.5 feet of snow still for a couple weeks. It finally evened out though.
Perfect.
Yeah, and got back to running, which if anyone's a runner and takes breaks, you know how brutal that can be.
Yeah.
But it's been nice.
Oh yes, thank you. We're sharing your screen. So thank you. So the agenda for today, or at least a few things that I have, and if people want to add things as well. The first was, there was the inaugural recording of the CHAOSS podcast this last week. Georg or Matt or Don, do you want to tell us how you're feeling after that podcast? And Georg, kind of what the next steps are on this?
I thought it went really well. I mean, I enjoyed doing it. I listened to it afterwards. I thought it sounded great. Georg did a fantastic job of organizing the whole thing and editing it. So I thought it was, I was really happy with it.
Totally agree.
Yeah, it was super impressive for Georg to get us off the ground. We're still working on like the formal production process through partnership that Georg can get into, but it's just really good to have a podcast talking about CHAOSS. Just within the first few minutes, we realized just how much there is to unpack, and that we can be a little, navel gazing at the beginning, like talk about our working groups, talk about the projects that are meaningful, and then extend out and start to interview interesting people that are measuring things in interesting ways in the industry. So the model is looking really good, and we're all at home and not traveling, so let's do this.
It was funny when I listened to it too. There were like so many answers that like the three of you had that I was listening to, and I'm like, oh, there's so much more to that answer, but we just don't have time. There's so much more under the hood there. So that was cool. I agree. Thanks.
I also want to echo what Matt and Dawn already said, and and so the next steps are, I'm working with the Code Fund podcast network to get us on there, because they will take all the administrative editing, publishing, all that over and help with that. And we can then focus on the fun part, which is doing the recordings and doing the interviews and all that.
What is the domain that the podcast will be hosted at? Or like, usually I get stuff through Apple or Spotify or whatever.
So we'll be there. We'll be on iTunes. We'll be on Spotify. I'm assuming we'll be on all of the popular ones. But that's why we are partnering with the Code Fund podcast network, because they will help us get on there. And so we don't have to do all that work. And then we will have a website, and we have yet to work with the Linux Foundation on setting up the subdomain. But we'll do that. And I don't know whether it will be cast.chaoss chaos.community or podcast.chaos.community or whatever. I don't know yet. If you have a suggestion for a subdomain to use, I'm open for suggestions.
What is the rationale for a subdomain?
We will have so the podcast will be hosted on Fireside, I think is the platform, where we upload all the show notes, all the audio, we have the feed, it integrates with iTunes and Spotify and all of those platforms. And then we just need a URL, and we can use their URL, or we can provide our own subdomain and point it to that website, where we then have one place for the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, and for visibility and searchability, like having it on our domain is really advantageous as opposed to boosting Fireside's SEO.
Okay.
So like podcast dot would be fantastic.
Ooh,
But
I like
think
that.
maybe I misunderstood the question, but I think the question was less about why do we need a separate subdomain like podcast.chaos.community as opposed to putting it on a page on the existing website.
Yes.
So chaos.community/podcast and integrating it with the existing website. I think that was Matt's question.
It was. Thank you.
The answer is that the Linux Foundation is not being responsive to my request to make that happen.
To add a folder.
Subdomain.
To
Or a-
have a podcasting plugin to WordPress. I sent the request
Oh.
and the request was closed.
I see.
So we're going to go with the CodeFund Podcast Network, and they will host it on a different platform.
But then if it's on this Fireside platform, is that correct? What I just said so far?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then somewhere in the chaos.community world, we point to that.
Definitely.
We can probably embed it. So it can probably be embedded in some fashion in the HTML. So
You're bringing up a great point though, Matt, that like we should map out, where we plan to make shout outs to the podcast on the existing site. And then like per episode, like what does the URL look like? And is that something that, I think that was Kevin, to Kevin's point, like, can we plop that in someplace where it's just a JavaScript sort of drop in as opposed to needing a plugin? Those are all good questions to get answered. And I think when we continue to work with the people that from the podcast network, we'll just have to ask those questions.
Okay. I guess I'm still just kind of missing why we need a subdomain, but maybe it was answered and I'm not tracking.
I
This
think
would
it
be
lets us.
this would be this first subdomain that we would have in the chaos.community. And so
I
like
think
everything else that we've done has just been under / things.
I think if I'm getting it right, it's that would allow us to direct it to a site that is not on the Linux Foundation's WordPress, and where we could have a podcast. Is that it?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Is that it, Georg?
Yes. So
Okay.
if we look at the Sustain OSS podcast,
Why would a subdomain give us more latitude?
so
Presumably, though, if the Linux Foundation let us direct it to a server that we have some control over, and they don't.
I see.
I don't know if they'll let us do that, but they might.
Okay.
we have gotten a subdomain before for Discourse. We just never used
Oh
Discourse.
yeah, I remember
And
that.
this is a similar thing where we would have a page like this for the Sustain, but we would have one for the Chaos project.
I see.
And then at the top, you just type in cast.chaos.community
I see.
to get here.
Okay.
Kevin, is it possible to do this in in WordPress without having the WordPress plugin installed?
Yes. Yeah. Fireside has the ability to embed the player into HTML code. So we can just basically copy the code and embed it into a web page, and we can have it right there.
So what's the downside to doing that?
That's what we do with YouTube currently.
Yeah.
I don't see a downside in that. I think it's just a matter of, we do have to figure out kind of how we would organize that on a page, or where it would be in navigation, all of that stuff. But it's pretty doable on our end.
So Georg, why would you rather do this at a subdomain that we have to manage a separate instance of something rather than embedding it in
We
an
will have
existing
the
page?
separate something anyway. It's just a matter of whether it's available through a subdomain or whether it's available through a different URL. And either way, we can still embed it and have a slash page. That does not change. But let's cross this path. Let's cross this bridge when we get there.
I guess it just sounds like we're setting up something else that we have to maintain. And it's not clear to me the benefit of doing that.
Okay, when it comes to setting it up, I'll start another conversation and then we can go into the details, because
Yeah.
right now we're a little bit guessing at all the details because we don't have the platform yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And thank you for,
Point out,
for doing this.
Thank you.
A year in the making, right? As you said, I think before, so.
I think 2 is what he said.
2 years. Even a bigger thank you then.
I remember it. This was, where were we? What open source summit were we at where we had this? Vancouver. When was Vancouver?
I don't know. I've lost
I
track
think
of
it's
travel.
2018.
I believe it was last summer, right? But
Was it last summer? I remember talking to Jono Bacon about the.
No, it was the previous one.
oh, sorry, yeah, 2 years ago, 2018. Sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, I remember talking to all kinds of people about podcasting at that event.
And do we have a pretty good maybe setup of folks to reach out to do these? And then that was one question. And then the second question was, will you host them all, Georg, or will hosts rotate? It's all on the mailing list. Oh, well.
Sorry, the answer was to Matt Snell.
Oh, I thought you were fine.
No, if you
Don't
go,
read the pop-up chats out of context.
I did.
It'd be worth pulling up I'll link in the note-taking document, the metric podcast outline, the strategy document that Georg and quite a lot of people, including myself, weighed in on.
Okay.
That's all outlined in there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
so yeah, I have a folder for this. We have the strategy document, which outlines what we want to do, what the scope is, what the format is, and all that. And then we have a document where we have some ideas for people to interview. And I think we have enough content for the next 3 years.
Okay.
We might have to go to a faster schedule if we want to get to everything. But we have plenty of people to reach out to and schedule. Matt Broberg, I still need to respond to your email. I haven't read it yet, but
No rush.
Just as a update to everyone, we were going back and forth on whether to start scheduling interviews in the next episode or whether to get the Code Fund podcast network set up done first. So more to come.
Yeah, if you've got momentum, I mean, I'm happy to contribute. in some way. No idea what way you want me to.
I put you
Yes, we would
down.
love an episode on Augur.
Yeah, that would be absolutely awesome. And to get Dawn in there to talk about her configuration and customization of it, I think, yeah, we have.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
And like we mentioned in the podcast, I think it would be good to get all of the software projects in and have some people who are using them in real ways.
Yep.
As well.
Cool.
So yeah, if you have ideas that haven't been listed in that guest planning document that we linked to here, please add them. You're quite welcome. And if you are interested in being on a panel or just being like on deck to be on a panel, if we ever need to grow that, please add yourself to the strategy doc. But yeah, by default, Georg and I were planning to alternate hosting, and Don, you're welcome to dive in there too. And yeah,
And I'm happy to host as well. I like doing that
awesome.
kind of thing.
Good. All right. We'll have a nice,
I can be
nice,
I can be
healthy.
a guest late night host.
Yes.
One of the things that is important to me for this CHAOSS podcast is that it's a community podcast. So it's not about me. It's not about any one of us. It's
Right.
really, we can rotate and we all own it together.
Right on.
Yeah, and I think too we should think about diversity among the hosts as well, and have some conversations about that.
Yep.
Great point.
Ray, are you asking for this doc? That doc?
I was just looking for it. I couldn't. Cool.
It's in the
thank you.
notes now. They just added it.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Georg, I'm not going to let you off the talking hook for a second. You sent out an email. I'm with Dawn. It's hard to believe it's only Tuesday, but I think you sent it out Monday, which was yesterday. I was off
like a month
I was
ago.
off on trash day by like 2 days. I'm like, hey, I need to get the garbage cans out. And I'm like, oh wait, that's
Yeah,
not.
I have no idea what day of the week it is anymore.
So I think Georg sent out something on, yes, this app evolution working group, or I'm sorry, ecosystem working group. And I think that was yesterday.
It was yesterday.
Okay.
Yep.
I think we talked about it last week on the call.
Could you kind of tell us what's going on with this, Georg?
Yeah, so the story behind this working group is that at scale, at the beginning of this month, I was approached by Shri, and he said, hey, I really am looking at these CHAOSS metrics and I want to understand how we can use them for the GNOME project and GNOME projects and foundation and all that. And he said, well, I also have these other GNOME people that are also interested in this. And we've been trying to get metrics for a while, and now we want to make a more concerted effort. Can we maybe partner with you? I said, sure, I'm happy to always talk about metrics. And then we pulled in KDE and we started about talking metrics. And I was like, okay, how about we set up a regular cadence of meetings to do this work? How about we not only use the CHAOSS metrics, but actually contribute this to the CHAOSS project? And so we decided, okay, sure, let's start a working group under CHAOSS where we use the same mechanisms that we've used in our other working groups here to think about what does it mean to use the CHAOSS metrics for the app ecosystem projects. And so this is GNOME, KDE, and the likes. It is not going to be like the other working groups, a way to define metrics unless we have something new. It's more a way to think about how can we package the metrics and help our projects, help our foundations to consume and use the metrics. So we have not fully decided yet what the outcome of the working group is going to be, or how it's going to impact. Someone has, thank you, background noise. So we might be looking at a series of blog posts. We might be looking at a tutorial. We don't know yet. But we all have this idea that, hey, we need metrics. We want metrics for open source app projects. And so that's what this project is all about. And we hope to draw on all the amazing work that has been done by the other CHAOSS projects and by the software projects to, yeah, come up with some solutions.
Okay, that makes sense. I have a few questions that stem from this. One is, it's just a it's a time issue. So as we have more working groups, and we already have, I mean, sometimes up to 8 hours of working group meetings per week, do you think this, do you see this as being an issue, or how to manage this? Just, it creates quite a bit of high contact. I'm totally for doing this work. I'm just trying to think through some of these timing things, or if it's not a problem, maybe I'm creating a problem that isn't really there.
I think it's a growing pain that we as a community will be going through on trying to figure out how to scale what we're doing.
Okay.
And I agree with you that it's not feasible for you or me or any one of us to be in everything that is happening in CHAOSS. I think the CHAOSS project needs to grow beyond that small scale. And just from a scheduling perspective, I don't see a problem because we still have slots in the week where
Sure.
the channel is open. And I don't expect all of us to be in all the working groups. So that's my answer.
Okay. Listening to your answer, I mean, I agree with you. We might want to think about how we make sure that if we scale and we have like parts of the CHAOSS project that, well, so like right now it's just kind of I'm sorry, this is going to sound like a very personal thing, but like right now I try to attend every working group just so that I can kind of track what's going on, and I can just make sure that I have a clear understanding of kind of what everybody's doing. So I'm taking on work in each one of the working groups. And I'm with you that as we scale up these types of ways to consolidate metrics that are meaningful for a particular area, that's a very good thing. So how can we think about, from a management perspective, being able to enable that to happen, right? Providing the platform and the tools and the resources for that to happen, but also preventing like kind of off conversations that aren't captured in the community as a whole, or, you know, kind of dark areas of the project. So how do we, and you don't have to have an answer now, but it's just something that I'll probably start thinking about.
Yeah, I also added a note in the doc as well. I mean, I think I share somewhat your concerns, Matt. Like, I think the term working group sets an expectation that this is going to like go on like a somewhat permanently. I mean, I'm speaking also as a person that I think consumption of our metrics is somewhat of a challenge for a new person coming in. So this is important, but I mean, I think it's fine. I mean, you know, we don't know where this is going to go. Maybe like we can have bulk of the discussion on over like a weekly meetings over a couple of months, and then you kind of disband, right? Or it gets absorbed into like one of the activities of existing working groups. But you know, it's like setting up like, you know, more working groups at some point it's not going to scale, right? Because we can't be, I mean, people are not going to be at all meetings, for instance. So I mean, I think this is important stuff that we probably want to do with two pretty large like open source community, but you know, maybe, you know, working group just sets a different expectation. I mean, I don't know if that's your concern, Matt, but
It is.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. The more you talk about this, the more this feels like a meeting or a series of meetings rather than a working group. Kind of like, if you think about how we plan the CHAOSS.Con, for example, we hold some CFP selection meetings because there's some work that has to happen, and it's not a working group. It's just some meetings where we get the people who are interested in getting together while we figure out some things. And this feels more like that. Like maybe it's a series of meetings where we figure out how to better work with the app ecosystem. And then maybe it becomes something else if we figure out that this is really a bigger problem or something more that we need to do. I don't know what the right answer is, but I agree. It feels like maybe the working group isn't necessarily what we need.
I mean, I don't know, I get, we're not going to win linguistic wars, but I mean, is it a task force? Is it is it a group that looks across the other groups and tries to identify metrics? Is it a workshop, like a virtual workshop kind of a thing where the work that needs to be done is identified over maybe a 2-hour meeting, and then that group kind of reports back, thinks through what they think they really need to accomplish and can accomplish and how to do it? Or you think that's already pretty clear, Georg?
No, it's certainly not clear because I don't know what we'll be doing or what the outcome is going to be. But I like the idea of maybe using a different word.
Yeah, I kind of like workshop. I think that's a good term for it. But...
Yeah, and
maybe a special interest group.
And we don't necessarily need to define it right now, do we? I mean, could this group get together and meet for, have a couple of meetings and then figure out what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that makes sense.
I'm interested in what comes out of this too, simply because I think there's other groups. So for example, if you recall, like at CHAOSS.Con Europe in Brussels, there were a lot of people that were interested in open source in, say, the scientific software domain. And so that would be a whole separate group of people that may have an interest in drawing the metrics and tooling together in ways that are meaningful for them. So kind of understanding how this first group works, the app ecosystem, probably could be very valuable for other collections, or maybe collections of people. That doesn't sound quite right, but groups of people that come together in a particular area of interest. And then the last thing that I wanted to say too is I really like the idea of CHAOSS, the CHAOSS project providing a space or a platform by which groups with an interest could do the work. So even if it's things like Zoom channels, posting of minutes, being able to talk about their work in a community call, having honestly just a group of people who are there to listen and talk through complex ideas, I like that a lot. So I think a lot of, particularly in the scientific software community, there is no place like that. Mm-hmm. There's no organizing center.
Right, no, there's not.
CHAOSS to provide that organizing center would be extremely valuable.
Yeah, and I think it would give them a common language that like they don't. There's an absence of some of the things that we take for granted, like a community manager role. I don't think there's a shared understanding of what that even is in the scientific open source community. So I think there's a way that we can help educate and support them. I agree.
Okay.
Anyway, the next meeting is next Monday. So Monday, April 6th. And you're all invited.
I mean, it makes me, even just if you look down on the, like the points, the bullet points for today's meeting, we have the OS OSPO connections. I mean, that could be another potential group of folks that care about a different set of metrics and care about a different arrangement of technologies that are meaningful within OSPOs. Maybe that's too broad of a way of thinking about it, but okay, cool. Thank you. Any other questions on that? All right, cool.
Mike, I have a question.
Hi, King.
Yeah, King. First, I know the chaos is in 2 weeks ago. Then I don't know how to use GitHub, and you know I send a GitHub account, and you know, many of our friends, my college, my teammates, they are very interested in the chaos. They want to matrix their project, our company project, and Chinese project in GitHub. They are very interested in it. You know, many Chinese company and Chinese how to say engineer, many Chinese company and Chinese engineer want to connect with you, of you, the member of the chaos. So just now I ask the question: do you consider to have the CHAOSS.Con in China? You say the LinuxCon every year held in China, every year. You know, my English is poor, so I English every day. Our friend is the English. Yeah, because English is the common language in the community.
Yes.
So, but you know, last a week later, we will hold the chaos community in China. We talk about online via the Zoom. So today it has almost 10 people want to join the meeting in China. So I think it's a very good, now it's very good situation for chaos going to China, and let more and more Chinese people to know chaos, what the chaos is, work for. So I think there are many people will join the community, will join the chaos. You know, now it's April in China. April in China.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So okay.
Yeah, no, that's the completely fair statement. And in fact, this question came up earlier in 2020 about even just hosting a meeting that was more time friendly with the Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
So that seems like that needs to happen, and that has been on my to-do list. So that's probably something I should just fire up. And in fact, some of the early meetings on running in the Pacific Rim could simply be just around what is chaos, what is the structure of the project, what it look like. I mean, kind of the a primer on what the project is about. So it's point well taken. Thank you.
Yeah, the other thing I think we could look at too, excuse me, is, you know, maybe the next, so there aren't any in-person Linux Foundation events in China right now for obvious reasons, just like there aren't anywhere else. But the next time they do one of the open source summits in China, or the next KubeCon or something in China, maybe we try to do some sort of chaos meeting at those events, in addition to, you know, the more regular things that we could do via Zoom calls.
Yep. And even if it was listening to you talk, I mean, even if it was kind of lower profile than CHAOSScon, you know, like a full submission system, but even just almost like a birds of a feather session that was a little bit more formal.
Yeah, or even just a half-day session to talk about the things that, you know, Kingao, that you're interested in, or that some of the people you work with are interested in. We could put together, you know, some kind of little agenda for, even if it was just like a half a day or something. I
Yep.
don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Many
My neighbor's
university
back.
and many students are now search the chaos. The last day they sent how to say it? They sent a text to me, and they translated the chaos into Chinese, and they asked me, "Is this right?" Okay, I think it's very interesting in chaos, and I think maybe next con we can have the meeting or conference with the LinuxCon together, or you can come to China, and I think it's very good opportunity. You can recognize China and the Chinese engineer.
Yep. So why don't, King, I'll connect with you, and then we can find a time that could even work for a Zoom call that's more friendly to folks in
Yeah.
China. And we could do that once a month.
Okay, once a month. Okay. Okay.
Or maybe every 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. I think every 2 weeks is okay. Once a month is too long.
Okay. Why don't you and I can connect and find a time that would, as a point contact for me now, you are that person. We could find a time that could work for you and for me, and then we can arrange from there. How does that sound?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for
Yeah,
pushing
and
that.
I think so the way I would approach that, I would start with a single meeting and see how it goes and see who attends and talk to the
Okay.
people who attend and see what the right cadence is. I think
Fair enough.
maybe we shouldn't decide that. We should get the people on the call who are interested in the topic and figure out what people want to talk about and how often they want to talk about it.
Right on. Well, we can we'll find time for that first meeting, and then
Yeah.
set things up from there.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks,
And
King.
after 2 or 3 meetings, we'll create a working group repository, and then we'll have the whole discussion about what to structure. No, excellent, excellent. Well, I really look forward to having some more involvement with China and
Yes.
grow that connection.
Yep. Okay. Great. Thank you, King. In terms of CHAOSScon North America 2020, I mean, I know that there's an events committee, but I think we have to plan for the real, honest to goodness reality that this is not going to happen in person. I just don't see how that's going to happen. So we need, whether it's the events committee or people who have an interest in thinking through this, I think that's what's going to happen. So
Yeah, I think we had a conversation about this. I think when we sort of kicked off the CHAOSScon North America planning, and one of the things that we talked about, so we talked about a couple of things. So we talked about how we should try to do it with the Linux Foundation event if at all possible, knowing that the June event was possibly unlikely. I think at the time that we started this, it was seeming more likely, and now I think it's seeming not likely at all. And it sounds like if it doesn't happen, the Open Source Summit North America, they're going to convert it to a virtual event. So I think the decision we need to make is, do we want to be a virtual event that's part of the Open Source Summit North America? That's one option, which could possibly cram, like, I don't want to spend 6 days on Zoom in a row, for example, I know it's crazy, but I think we should look at, do we want to do a virtual CHAOSScon as part of a North American open source summit, like tied right in the way we would do it otherwise? Would we want to do it as a virtual event at a different time? Or the other option that we talked about initially was, do we want to see if we could do this at All Things Open instead of Open Source Summit North America? Because All Things Open is
August.
October.
Oh, it's
October. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Certainly a higher
it's the
probability
week
of happening.
before. It's the week before the Open Source Summit, Europe in
Europe.
Dublin.
Okay.
Don, are you thinking it'd be like to extend it on the weekend before ATO or like during the day during other ATO sessions?
I don't know. We talked about maybe that as a possibility. I have never been able to attend ATO because it's always scheduled over the Open Source Summit in Europe. And so
Right.
I live in Europe, so I go to the European event. Yeah,
So
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I love ATO. It's one of my favorite conferences of the year, and it's also been growing in popularity. So there are now about a half dozen kind of extension events on it. So
Including the Community Leadership Summit, just to
exactly,
point that
Community
out. So
Leadership
keep
Summit
going.
is all day on Sunday, I think is the plan so far. And then there's a really awesome diversity and inclusion centric day that weekend.
Is that the same community summit that used to be part of O'Reilly's conference?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
CLS was part of
CLS.
OSCON.
It used to be the day before or the
OSCON.
weekend before OSCON.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's all. There's a lot of aggregation happening around ATO, which I think is fantastic because it is a world-class conference, but it will also mean competing with some others. So I love the idea of exploring it as an option. It's a really good one to bring us all together. Just kind of, we'll have to look closely into the timing.
It sounds like if we did it at ATO, we would have what I affectionately refer to as the FOSDEM problem.
Yeah.
Which is where these events have sprawled and you end up with, do I go to the to-do group meeting? Do I go to the CHAOSS.Con? Do I go to this other 10 things that are happening on that same day? And do we want to compete with that?
Yeah, I also think it's just, way too close to FOSDEM. I think it's another challenge because, we'll have like 2 CHAOSS.Cons within, like basically 4 months, right? So.
Where is All Things Open held?
Raleigh.
Raleigh, okay.
Isn't that where it is? I don't know.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it does make it available to North Americans more so than Europe, a European conference. But
at least it's not on the West Coast. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still a lot. I agree. They are very close together, so we could almost. We wouldn't need to necessarily even insist on completely distinct content.
And
there's also a radical idea. We could, given the circumstances that we're in right now, do we even want to do a CHAOSS.Con North America this year?
I thought about that too.
So, this is slightly different. Now that I'm glad King, you joined the call and you brought up China. Maybe we do. So maybe this is a crazy idea. Maybe we do something virtual. Maybe we do like a 2 half-day like CHAOSS.Con, one that's like very APAC friendly, that's more intro type of topics, and then do sort of regular CHAOSS.Con, but it's only for like 3-4 hours, right? So you're not in Zoom session for like 8 hours. We're already spending like a way too much time on Zoom these days for obvious reasons. So maybe it's not necessarily happening at the same time as Open Source Summit. Maybe it's, I don't know, I'm making this up. Maybe it's sometime in middle of July and we do half-day session that's very APAC friendly, and then we do a half-day session that's for more North America friendly. But I don't know if that's a bad idea or.
There was a suggestion a while back. I don't remember who made it, but it was. So a lot of these talks, the talk is about like kind of creating a vertical in the day. You have talk. There was a suggestion about kind of creating a horizontal where the CHAOSS.Con actually occurs over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. And you have a presentation on Tuesdays, Thursdays, or something along those lines that you actually draw it out. You'd have fewer speakers. Thanks for coming, Matt. But you have fewer speakers, but it's also way less intense of a session on Zoom. That's all.
Yeah, I think if we talk about converting this to a virtual event, I think we should really think creatively about what it would mean to do it as a virtual event and what should change.
I think one of the things we could do is have very short video talks on topics, you know, just very micro level short videos that people can watch, and it can be part of an archive. I mean, when I do videos for students online, I think about 3 minutes to 4 minutes is their attention span. And I think that it would be, for anything that we record, that would be about it. And whether or not we can get people to show up at events, that might actually be harder than if we have a, you know, people can do the video in advance and then maybe like have a group of 3 or 4 people who did micro videos do a panel live as part of CHAOSS.Con.
Podcast to the rescue, right? Like run a podcast.
But yeah, this would just be video. It'd be what's called a vlog, I think, if I'm getting the kids' language right.
I just recorded one of those about CHAOSS, actually about Augur. Interestingly enough, it was a little 5-minute thing that we're doing at VMware. So we haven't released them yet, but I did talk about CHAOSS and Augur.
Oh, cool.
It showed some charts.
But like, right, 5 minutes is about the attention span.
And I covered a lot in 5 minutes. When she said it was going to be
Yeah.
5 minutes, I was like, I don't even know where, you know, like, but I felt like I covered a lot of ground in a very short amount of time by necessity. So it actually, the format actually kind of worked pretty well.
It sounds like people are pretty open to being creative on this, one way or the other. I personally favor creativity. We have kind of nothing to lose and a lot to gain by trying unique formats.
Yeah, I mean, my concern with canceling it altogether is, you know, I don't want us to sort of like disappear. You know, even if it's like virtual, I think, you know, I mean, it needs to be well thought out, and like Don said, we need to be creative on how we do this. But my preference is to do something, even if it's like a short burst of like video content, like that's virtually, versus not having a presence at all.
Okay.
And that's sort of my preference. But you know, realistically, if we're gonna sort of restructure it, like June might be too short of a time frame, right? I mean, if we need to push it out to like August, like it was last year, right, in San Diego, that may not be a. I mean, in August, like a lot of people, even in Europe, will be sort of coming back from vacation, so maybe some of them could even join us. So,
yeah, and I think I would guess the desire for co-location from the Linux Foundation, that's one of the hopes. I'm guessing that'll fade a little bit based on everything being virtual. That being virtually co-located doesn't sound the same as being physically co-located. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so. Let me just break this down because we're kind of running out of time. We have some other stuff on the agenda. If I look at next steps for this, I think we should keep the CFP open to continue to collect some talks. The Linux Foundation is going to make a no-go call, I think May 1st for that event.
Okay.
So I think I'm not sure what date we said we were going to close the CFP, but I think we should wait and close it on that no-go date.
Okay.
So that we can decide what we do from here. I think we probably said it was going to close in April, and someone else should confirm that I'm not making up that May 1st date, but I think that was what they said the no-go date was. So we have CFP closing April 20th, so we can extend it for a little bit if we need to, and then I think we should wait to make a call on exactly what we do with this after the Linux Foundation makes their call.
Sure, and they may have guidance as well based on their no-go decision. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
do we already have submissions? I don't know, Georg, if you know off the top of your.
I don't know. I haven't seen anything.
No worries. I mean, we can add it to the notes later, but
Okay.
curious. But
then I think we'll just kind of hit this one last thing here. So Google Summer of Code and Outreachy. Google Summer of Code application ends today for all of you that are subscribed to all of the repositories. This will lower the amount of noise in your inbox because it's been extremely active. I think at some point we're going to have to sit down and think about how we go about selecting Google Summer of Code. Basically, the next step for Google Summer of Code is we put in our requests for the number of slots of students. And then with Outreachy, again, we just have one slot, and we'll have to think through kind of what that selection process looks like. So just kind of keeping people posted. The student activity application period is kind of coming to an end now, and we're about ready to transition over to work that needs to be done in the CHAOSS project, where we actually go through the selection process. Okay, so that's it. I'm also working a little bit with the Linux Foundation to figure out how to get the Outreachy students paid, because that's dollars that are coming out of Community Bridge.
And have we decided how many Google Summer of Code students we're going to ask for, or will that be part of the discussions we have later?
That's part of the discussion. So we'll take a look right now. Garrick and I just went through it. Garrick, do you remember how many we had in that list, in that governance list?
I don't off the top of my head, but if we look here, it's a pretty long list.
So we'll go through, I'll take a look. I'll take a look to see if all of their links, their submission links are working. If they are not working, that'd be a bad submission, but I'm guessing we'll just have to kind of go through these. Yeah, and we'll allocate them, you know, like the Augur-ish applicants and the Grimoire Lab-ish applicants. And you can, honestly, it's probably that Augur will, you and your team, Sean, will take a look at the applicants around Augur.
Yeah, like in the past, that's kind of what we've done. I guess we discussed previously asking for more than 4.
Yeah.
And so when is the discussion about how many to ask for happening?
I think we have a week.
Okay. So should that be a separate meeting? Is that something we should discuss?
I'll send out a note to everybody once this kind of closes.
Okay.
I'll give you a series of next steps. I don't think we have to have a meeting. Here's the timeline.
Okay. Is that the updated timeline? Because they updated it about 2 weeks ago.
This is the timeline on their website, so it's the most.
Okay, it's the updated one then.
Representative, yeah.
Okay, so it's somewhere, it doesn't say when we actually make our application, but it's somewhere in there. I'm sure we have a couple weeks actually.
April, I think they moved it, or it used to be earlier, but I think it's April 21st now.
When we have to notify how many we want.
Well, yeah, that's how if I'm understanding.
Organization
slot request, yeah, April 21st is the slot request.
We have we have 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they give us slots, and then we invite students or mentees. Cool.
Cool.
That was it. Anything else from anybody in the last 4 minutes? Good. Alrighty. It's good to see everybody. Hope you're all doing great.
Yeah, likewise. Talk to you later.
Yep, I'll talk to you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.